First and foremost, I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Creatively Speaking. If you don't know me, my name is J.R. Arthur, aka the Pixel Monkey, and today this is a little bit different than what I usually do. What I'm doing today is I'm bringing in a guest, and I'm gonna let that guest speak to you about building a diverse team and why that's even important and how do you do it. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy this.
My name is George Kelly. I am the Director of Media and Interactive at Multi-Image Group.
First off, George, I gotta ask, why did you build such a diverse team?
The team I built is only diverse because the people that I hired come from different places and different backgrounds. I didn't set out to hire a diverse team. I set out to hire a talented team. I just didn't let any preconceived notions of anything stand in my way. To me, the idea of race, identity, gender, they don't factor into any decisions you make when you're looking for a teammate. What you want is the broadest representation of where you are. We live in South Florida. When I started here, it was all middle-aged white guys. Middle-aged white guys tell very good stories for middle-aged white guys, but they don't tell stories necessarily that others can identify with. I can fake it because, I'm good at what I do, but I'm not going to be able to tell it from an authentic place. So one of the first things I did was I said, okay, we live in South Florida. This is a very culturally diverse area. Why am I not representing the area that I'm in? Because that's the power of South Florida, is that we are so culturally diverse. This is kind of the melting pot, or not really melting pot, salad, if you will, of our national identity. All of the ingredients come together from all over the place and make a delicious salad. That's how it is here in South Florida. You've got people from the islands, you've got people from Latin America, you've got people from Europe. They're all, and Africa and the Middle East and Asia, all coming here because this is a destination location, right? So you have this broad range of people from all over the place. Why not use that voice and those multiple voices as a strength? So for me, the term diversity belies what I'm really after, which is a variety of voices and perceptions that help me tell effective stories for our clients, which sounds rather cold and clinical, but at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is that that's what we do. We tell stories for our clients. Those stories need to resonate with them in order to be stories that they can take actionable action with, right? If you don't identify with the person telling the story, you can't get past that wall. You just become more media that they're ignoring. However, if I can get past that wall, if I can get to the heart of them, then my story can be something that compels them to action. Multi-Image Group does large corporate events. Those events are designed to move the audience, to move them in a way that whatever the sponsor of that event is, the person paying for that event is, move them in a way that will create return on investment. If I spend $1 million, I damn sure want to make sure that I'm getting what I paid for and maybe a little bit more. The quality of voice and the diversity of voice helps us achieve that. We create content for these big events. That content needs to speak to the audience. I can create content that speaks to the audience in a disingenuous way, and it can be effective, but it will never be as effective as someone who can create content that speaks to the audience in the way the audience speaks. The example I like to use is I'm Gen X, right? And as Gen X, sometimes there seems to be, well, not with Gen X so much as with millennials and boomers, or Gen Z and this. For me, that's all hyperbole, but the point is that I can't speak realistically in a way and in a voice that matches the media consumption of someone who is in Gen Z. My kids, luckily, have taught me how to see that media and understand it. And I've done a lot of work to make sure that I maintain some kind of credibility and freshness in my view. But at the end of the day, I'm not 24. I didn't grow up with the same cultural things that my 24-year-old did. So how can I relate to them on that level? I can't. I can make a lot of noise in that direction. I can remind them of things I think that they remember fondly, but I can't identify with them. And when you're talking to an audience, identification with the audience is actually something that's really important. So that makes you turn around and look at your team and say, wow, I've got 12 people and they all look exactly like me and they all think exactly like me. At that point, you know you failed, because you're not representative of a broad variety of voices. Like I said earlier, diversity isn't something that I go after as a checklist item. It's something that I remove from the equation entirely, and then the only thing I worry about is talent, and a voice comes with it, because anybody who's talented is already speaking in the voice of their group. You know, a great example is being able to communicate realistically with a female audience. I understand certain things about females and women and culture, and but I understand them from a male point of view. So I'll never be able to understand them from a female point of view, because, well, that's just not who I am, right? So having women on the team is important, because last time I checked, 50% of the population was female. And the same thing goes for Latino or Asian or black or whatever. It doesn't matter what the group is. If they have a group dynamic that requires a specific way to communicate, I should be open to all of those things and looking actively for people who are talented, because as I've said 100 times to you, JR, talent is the cost of admission. You don't even get an interview if you're not talented. Everything else is hard work and dedication. Talent first, then voices second. I can't do anything about communicating effectively with my audience if I don't understand that my audience has an ear that's tuned to a specific frequency.
George, let me cut you off for a second. I've worked in a lot of companies where I was the odd man out. Basically what I'm saying is, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I've walked into an office that was ultimately just a sea of white. Do you understand that what this company, being MIG, has built is not traditionally the norm by being so diverse?
Well, absolutely. And that's part of the problem. The hard truth is that, we're programmed to want to collect with people that are similar to us, either, belief-wise or looks-wise or whatever-wise, okay, or culturally. In order to step away from that, in order to look beyond that, you have to look to the heart of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, right? At the end of the day, I benefit threefold from having a staff that represents a lot of different voices. Number one, through your eyes, which is very different than the world I see through my eyes. I get to see the world through younger eyes. I get to see the world through female eyes. I get to learn from the people that I work with. I learn more from them than I will ever be able to teach them. That's valuable for me. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I get to refresh my love for perspective and for art. We have a gentleman on our team, Dennis, who started out doing urban art and graffiti, and he's amazing at it, right? And he does these giant murals in Miami, and they're beautiful. And I wouldn't ever get to see some of that stuff if we weren't on the team and he didn't open my eyes to the, hey, have you what is it, Wynwood? Yes. Where they have all the murals? And he talks about that, and it's like, so I went down there and it was amazing. Here's this guy that, super chill, very, down to earth, very quiet, very hard worker. You'd never know this guy is like, creating this amazing stuff down in the city of Miami. We benefit from that, you know. Danielle is a great example too, right? Another person who we work with, and she's a painter. Like, she just had her own art show. How cool is that, right? Because we open the door, we throw open the door, and we welcome people who have talent, and we don't look at anything past, okay, do you have talent? And then we notice, hey, you have a new voice. I think you're right, though. I think I'm the exception and not the rule, but, you know, I'm also probably a little older than most people, you know? So I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen the results. You know, I worked with one of the most talented art directors I've ever worked with, a gentleman named Jayanta Jenkins at the Martin Agency. That guy was brilliant, super cool, just a beautiful work. And he was like one of the only black creatives in an all-white agency. You can't turn a blind eye to that. You know, I mean, there were people, he would even joke about being token. That's not acceptable. It doesn't matter that it was 20 years ago. That's not acceptable. This person was just freaking good. They weren't token anything, you know. And that's not the kind of place that I want to build. Is a place where anybody feels like that they're checking off a box. That's one of the reasons I don't like to use the word diverse. I like to use the word representative, because that's really what it is. You know, we are representative of the culture that we live in. We live in Miami. We live in South Florida. That culture is broadly diverse and has a lot of different voices, and we tap into all of those. Yeah, we have a really good mix. And what ends up happening is that all of these cultures combine into our work, and it shows. You know, I mean, it really does. If you look at the work that we're doing, you can see all of these cultural influences. And on top of that is the MIG culture, if you will. You know, the ability to combine them all and come up with something unique and beautiful, and you know, and move our audience and move our work forward. Yeah, it's like really, really powerful. When people miss that because they're worried about, you know, whether or not the guy next to them or the girl next to them looks like them, they miss out on a whole world of vision that will make them better in the end. It's a symbiotic relationship. We as a company get a diversity of voices that help us communicate authentically with our audiences. I as a creative get input from different perspectives that allows me to change how I approach a problem, whether it's a filmmaking problem or a design problem. Now I have a different way to look at it that I didn't before, you know, because, you know, creatives tend to sometimes get in here and live in here, yeah, you know, and get stuck in there and think that they know what they're talking about. And, you know, for me, the personal philosophy has always been, I should never be the best at any place that I work. I shouldn't suck, don't get me wrong, but I shouldn't be the best. There should be plenty of people more talented than me. And B, I'm only as good as the team around me. In my role now, you know, it's kind of cool because I get to find people who are sublimely talented. I get to put them, you know, measure them as a cultural fit and put them into this team, and then watch the magic happen, you know, which, you know, is pretty freaking cool. I mean, like you, for instance, you know, you came in, you know, I mean, your work was great. We knew the work, but what we got was so much more because we created an environment where you can be, where you don't feel odd man out.
George, I got to do it again. I got to cut you off. And you're constantly saying what are valid points and very good things. But I have to ask, do you realize by creating a space where we as non-white people, for instance, don't feel judged, that ultimately is a better situation for our mental health? It helps keep our anxiety down and our stress down when we feel like there are places to go within the company because what we look like and who we are aren't what's going to hold us back.
I don't think I've ever thought of it in that context. what I try to do, and it's funny because you're asking me to articulate things that are kind of core DNA. What I try and do is I try and get the bullshit out of the way, and that not that those issues are bullshit, but I try and remove that from the work, right? Like I try and clear the table so that all you have in front of you is what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, and then give you a place to go and a place to grow. Okay, and that's true for every single department that I touch, and I touch quite a few of them, right? But the very first thing I did was I created a path forward for everyone, okay? Because you see, we're sitting in your office right now, right? Purple walls. What's interesting is for 7 years, this was my office. I lived in this place, sometimes 24 hours a day, it was a place where I was coming and I was working and I was making money, but I wasn't going anywhere. And I remember very clearly before my situation changed, I was at home complaining to my wife, and I was very seriously thinking about leaving. And I told her someone would have to die before I'd get a chance to change anything. A month later, my boss at the time told me he had cancer and he had to leave work. And at first I felt terrible, but then I realized the universe isn't listening to my wants and desires, and if it is, I should have asked for a lot more. I was stuck. And when I was given the role that I currently have, I promised myself I would not let anyone ever be in that position. Okay? I don't care who you are. You come and you work at MIG, you have opportunity, period. We've had this conversation before. We both grew up in the military. Yep. I think for me, it was always the military kids versus all of the civilian kids. It was never about race. It was about the fact that, we all got bused to the same school on the same bus, but we were those military base kids, If there wasn't a school on the base you lived on, you got bused, and it was us versus them. And the townies didn't like, because we were transitory or whatever. We disturbed their peace, whatever it was that was going on. So all of my friends, I never looked at friends in any other way than we live in the same neighborhood and we hang out together. I look at my obligations to my coworkers the same way. We live in the same neighborhood and we hang out together. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. As I've said to you before, and not in this interview, but before in our conversations, this is a business. All right? As mercenary as it sounds, there are distinct advantages to clearing the way for everybody to just be who they are and create at the highest level. Okay? I don't do it for that reason purely, but that is part of the motivation as well, because at the end of the day, graphic professionals, emphasis on the word professionals. All right? It means you're getting paid. If you're getting paid, that means you have to create value. If you have to create value, I'm going to create an environment where A, you feel valued, and B, you can create that value because you feel valued. It's impossible to do great work if you feel like an indentured servant. I don't want anybody to come into these offices or work on my team that feels that way. We're doing cool stuff here. Don't get me wrong, it's hard and it's still a job. But by and large, I think we're having fun.
So George, this is something that I just can't wrap my head around. I have to ask you this, but I personally feel it's not fair that you're creating the space that you would want to work in, but you're never, I mean never, going to get to work in that space. And I don't just mean work in that space because yes, you're here at work, but you created this space with your team. But you'll never feel the comfort and the security of having this environment to work in. Have you ever thought about that?
And thank you for that. Yes, I've worked really hard to create an environment that I would want to work in, knowing that I would never spend a day working in it, but working for it. And that's okay, because working for it is its own fulfillment. Having conversations like this where I know that my teammates they feel valued and they feel respected and they feel like they're important members of the team and they come to work you know, and they come to work and it's safe and it's a place that they can feel comfortable enough to, you know, hey, I'm not feeling it today. I don't know what's going on. You know, hey, you okay? You know, that's not bullshit. That's actual, real human connection. And at the end of the day, I think that we're all measured by how well we connect with each other. We cannot operate as men and women in an island. We have to be in community. I know some people don't like it that way, but that's the truth. We're designed that way. There was a recent Harvard study that showed that, you know, education, intellect, money, none of that matters for life happiness as much as good friends and colleagues. So if you're not going to be able to do your best work without having a place where you can feel safe and comfortable and taken care of, well, then I guess we better get busy making sure that we have that done. We built that, right?
So, George, I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest on my channel, Creatively Speaking. You don't understand how much, for one, this means to me that you've looked at my content and said to me, when do I get to be on your channel? As a team member, as a friend, as an employee, you don't understand the amount of support that I feel and continue to feel from you. You've been a big part in supporting what I'm doing. And by coming on here, that shows that. To those of you who have tuned in to this video today, I ask that you like this video and that you subscribe to my channel. And if there's anything else that you would like to know or you want to see, please leave a comment. I read them. And let me know if there's anything else that we can talk about. If you know somebody else who's willing to come on my channel and be interviewed about the workplace or just being a creative or how they get through the mental toughness of their medium, I'm more than willing to have them on here. You don't just have to be a designer, a videographer. You can be a dancer, a singer, you could be a painter, you could be a skateboarder, because I feel like all of those things involve their different forms of creativity. So I leave no one out. But I do have to close with this. Please stay creative, stay stress-free, and do amazing work. Always do the best that you can do, and don't let nobody talk you out of it. Until next time.